Hi everyone, welcome to Course 2, Unit 1, Technical Committees, Subcommittees, and Working Groups. I'm really excited to get started with this Course 2 because we're getting very close to your day-to-day work as a committee member or as a working group expert. So the questions answered in this unit are the following. What's the typical structure of a technical committee or a subcommittee? What's the role of a technical committee or subcommittee? What's the role of a working group? And what's the difference between a committee member and a working group expert? So keywords coming out of this slide are technical committee, subcommittee, working group, and hopefully at the end of this unit, you will understand what each represent. So before going forward with this course 2, I highly recommend that you complete course 1 just so that you understand the building blocks of the standard development process. So the course 1 is available on our ISO training channel. And again, I highly recommend that you go through this course 1 before continuing with the next courses. So getting started with this unit, what is the typical structure of a technical committee or a subcommittee? Well, here it is for technical committee. So in dark red, you have the technical committee, and in the lighter red, you have the working groups. So each technical committee has a chair driving the consensus process within the technical committee. That chair receives admin support by the secretary, and both constitute the secretariat of the technical committee. And each of these technical committee have a scope that you could find on the iso.org website, which defines the boundaries in which projects may be developed. And so this scope is approved by the technical management board. At the working group level, we have conveners driving the consensus process. And inside these working groups, he's driving the consensus process among experts, which are working on the actual technical documents. So for the moment, remember that at the technical committee level, the committee members take key strategic decisions. And at the working group level, we have experts working on the actual technical documents. So working on each clause of a standard and making the document move forward through the different steps of the standard development process, which we will cover in details in course 3. So remember I talked about a scope being assigned to a technical committee. Well, when that scope becomes too large, it may be divided into smaller scopes, which are then assigned to subcommittees. And a subcommittee will operate in the exact same way as a technical committee, with its own chair and secretary, driving the consensus process, and its own working groups, which develop standards. So the subcommittee really functions exactly the way as a technical committee, and they are created when the scope of the parent technical committee becomes too large, so unmanageable. Subcommittees are created so that the work is better structured and organized. So here's one of our useful slides to remember. So it provides you an overview of what we just discussed with the technical committee, subcommittee, and the various working groups. So naturally, if there are no subcommittees, then we simply end up with the first structure that I shared with you, where the working groups report directly to the parent technical committee. So the second question, what's the role between a technical committee and a subcommittee? So as I said in the previous slide, technical committees or subcommittees take key strategic decision to overview the development of standards under an approved scope. So example of these key strategic decisions are the approval of title and scope of the technical committee that is submitted to TMB for approval. They often approve the progression to the next stage in the standard development process. So for example, if a working group says, hey, our document is ready to go from the working draft stage to the committee draft stage, well, the working group will send a recommendation to the technical committee, and then the committee members will vote on whether they agree to move the project forward from the working draft stage to the committee draft stage. So don't worry if you feel a bit lost with this working draft stage and committee draft stage. That is all part of course 3. But for the moment, just remember that the TC with its committee members take the decision of moving the projects to the next stage based on the recommendation of the experts in the working groups. They also approve the conveners and the project leaders, and they also may vote on specific issues related to the activities of the technical committee. So for example, if a working group can't agree on something inside a committee and the convener is really having a trouble finding consensus at the working group level, it's really divided, say 50-50, agree or disagree, then that particular issue may be escalated to the technical committee where voting is allowed and committee members are allowed to vote on an action forward. So what's the role of a working group? Well, as I said, working groups are composed of experts, and the convener drives the consensus process amongst these experts, and these experts are really focused on the technical document. So they're focused on each clause inside a standard document. So what is the difference between a committee member and a working group expert? So we know now that committee members sit at the technical committee table, and we know that the experts sit at the working group table, and we know that technical committees take strategic decisions, whereas working group work on technical documents. So let's dive a little bit deeper on what's the difference between a committee member and a working group expert. So here you have your technical committee and you have your working group. Again, strategic decisions at the technical committee level and technical documents being worked on inside each working group. So the big difference between both is at the technical committee, we have committee members taking strategic decisions, but these committee members each represent one country, and it's one country, one vote, and the vote is taken by the head of the delegation at the plenary session. But what is important for you to remember at the technical committee level is that it's one country, one vote, and it's really committee members providing their point of view, but from the perspective of their national stakeholders. So they essentially go back to their country, or rather before a plenary meeting, they will gather the consensus at their national level, and the head of delegation will be appointed by the National Mirror Committee of that country to represent the country at the ISO plenary, and that committee member will vote on key strategic decisions based on its country point of view. Whereas in the working group, we have experts working on the technical documents, but they really work in their own capacity, so in their own individual capacity. They don't represent necessarily their country. They're well informed of their national position, but they are really appointed by the ISO member to these working group because they are experts and they will bring added value expertise to the document. And the working group, via the convener, will make recommendations to the technical committee for each country to vote on and take action. So that is the summary of this unit. I hope you now have a clear understanding of the difference between a technical committee, a working group, and their respective members. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you in the next unit. Thank you.